Everybody.
Verschlafen oder nicht?
No. I was on a call.
Oh,
Okay.
63.
So we are on Samech Gimel. Samech Gimel Amid Aleph. Lema Kasavra Chayrim Ein L'Shchita El B'Sof. So there's a question that when you do Shchita, does Shchita start from the beginning to the end? Or maybe the act of Shchita only is triggered right at the end? The Rava. The Omer Rava Adaini Machlokes. That in a major Machlokes, in another place in the Gemara, Rashi goes through the whole Machlokes there, is whether or not the concept of when you say two things, Mulim and Arelim, or Arelim and Mulim, whether at what point in your enunciation of those words triggers the halachic ma'aser. Hilka. Higdi Mulim Arelim. If he said Mulim first, then Arelim, only Mulim is chayli. Since he said it right at the end, the shchita only is at that last second. So the shchita is only going to have effect for the Mulim and Arelim lo chayli. And therefore it's going to be a kosher Pesach. But Higdi Arelim Mulim, if he said the word Arelim first and then Mulim, and Ein Shchita El B'Sof, the shchita only sort of has halachic significance right at the end, and he only said the word arelim at the end. Arelim chayli, mulim lo chayli. That's one pshat. However, Amar Rabba lo oilam ksavi acherim yeshna l'shchita metchila v'ad sof. It's not shchita only takes effect right at the end, but there's a process. It's the shchita has halachic significance both from the beginning to the end. The halacha b'ma'askin in our case is kagon shagomer belibo l'tarvayi. He had in his heart, or both groups, bein lemul and bein l'arelim, but only hotzi b'piv l'arelim lo hispik lomer lemulim ad shenigmar shchita b'arelim. And he enunciated the word arelim, and he didn't get out the word mulim until the shchita was finished. Ubaha pliki. And this, in fact, is their machlokas. The Rav Meir suffered lo ba'inin piv libo shavim. Rav Meir does not require a person's mouth and a person's heart to be the same. Therefore, even though in his heart he had the thought of mulim, since the only thing he expressed was arelim, it's not going to take effect. Rabbanan savi ba'inin piv libo shavim. You need your mouth and your heart together. And we don't just follow what is in your mouth. Freik the Gemara, Ksav Rav Meir, Lo Be'inin Piv Libo Shavim. What Rav Meir does not require a person's heart and mouth to be the same. Verminu. And he's kind of like my truma, the Amar Meiser. Person had in his mind to declare some produce truma, but what came out of his mouth is the word Meiser, or vice versa, Meiser v'amar truma. Oh, she'eni nechlas l'bayis zeh. I'm not going to go into this house. The Omar l'zeh, and he said a different house. Or she'eni net, he's making a net there. Or he says she'eni net l'zeh. I don't want to accept hanoah from such a person. Yeah, in the Omar l'zeh, and he ended up with saying another person. Lo Amar klum. Since there is a discrepancy between what's in his heart and what comes out of his mouth, this Tana holds nothing takes place. And in general, we know that an anonymous Mishnah, a Stam Mishnah, is Rav Meir. So it looks like Rav Meir does hold that you need Piv Libo Shavim. Amar Abaya. So Abaya gives a whole different teretz as to why there's a difference between if you say mulim and arelim versus if you say arelim and mulim. Remember, last night we learned that if you say mulim and arelim, it works, but if you say arelim and mulim, it doesn't work. Why? Amar Abaya Reisha, the Amar Simin Rishon Lemulim, The siman sheni afla reilin. We know during shechita there are two anatomic structures that have to be divided: the trachea and the esophagus. So for kosher shechita, you need both simonim to be cut. But Abai explains, Reisha was where during cutting the trachea, he had in mind or said mulin. And for the second siman, he added afla arelim, not just mulin, but arelim as well. So in the second siman was the thought of mulin. So basically there was thought of mulin in both simanim. That's why it's kosher. But seifa, the Omar siman rishon arelim. While he was cutting the trachea, he had in mind arelim. And during the siman sheni, he added the mulin. During the first siman cutting, there was never a thought of mulin. That's why if he has a thought of arelim and mulin, during the two simonim cuttings, the second time it won't work properly because there was not a mulim thought during the cutting of the first siman. Reb Meir Tamei. Now, Reb Meir is consistent. The Omar, mefaglin b'chatzi matir. There is a major debate in Menachos. We know that if you have in mind during shechita that you're going to eat of the korban chutz l'zmano, for example, tomorrow, so the korban is made pigul. The question is, now that we've learned that shechita has multiple parts to it, you have to cut siman rishon and you have to cut siman sheni. Now, shechita is a matir. It permits you to go on with Kabbalah, Hailach, and Zrika. If you don't do shechita, you can't eat the korban. Now, it's not the, kmitza of a mincha is a matir. So whenever you have multiple stages in a matir, the question arises, will a machshavas pigul take hold even if you have the machshava during only half of the process of the matir? So Reb Meir in Menachos holds that pigul will work. That means the animal will become pigul if you had your improper thought even during one of the processes of the matir, like cutting the siman rishon. Now, since Reb Meir holds you could be mafagel b'chatzi matir, you can have this kind of double machshava by arelim and mulim Israel in a chatzi matir. But Rabbanan Tamayu, the Amri ain't mafagel b'chatzi matir. The Rabbanan hold you got to be mafagel throughout the whole matir, not a half a matir. And therefore, the korban did not become puzzle when I thought of the arelim and mulim in only half of the matir. You got to be able to think about it throughout the matir. Mishnah. There is a pasuk in Shmos that says, "Lo sishchat al chametz dam zivchi." Don't shech the korban while you're in possession of chametz. Well, we'll see what that means. Al chametz. The lo yalin laboker zevach chag hapasach, and don't leave the. One second. Ala chametz. The person shechts the korban pesach and he has chametz in his rishus. Oiver b'loy saseh. So you're over the law of the pasuk we just learned of lo sishchat al chametz dam zivchi. Rabbi Yehuda Omer afa tomid. Rabbi Yehuda says even the korban the korban atomid shel ben arbayim that gets shechted with chametz around. We'll see whose chametz it is. Where does it have to be? According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says not just the korban pesach, it's any korban that's shechted during the Zman Isser Chometz, you'll also have that lav. Rav Shimon Oimer, HaPesach bar Ba'asar Lishmo Chayiv. If you shecht the Korban Pesach on the 14th, Lishme, and you had kavanah that it should be a Pesach, then Chayiv. But as we've learned, if a person shechts a Korban Pesach Shalol Lishmo, it's possible. Therefore, if he shechts the Korban Pesach Shalol Lishmo Bizmano with chametz in his possession, he's potter from that lav because the Pesach itself is possible. Reb Shimon also says, Shar kol azvachim, all this lav is only applicable to the Korban Pesach. Other korbanos that you shecht, bein lishman, bein shalol lishman, whether you do it lishma, whether you do it shalol lishma, if you shechted them on the 14th after Chatzos, you would be potter. Then, if you have a Korban Pesach, and in the middle of Pesach, b'moyed, you shechted lishma, now that's not the zman of shechting a Pesach. Shechting a Pesach has to be done on the 14th after Chatzos. So if on the third day of Pesach, you shecht the Korban Pesach lishma with chametz in your possession, you're going to be potter from this lav. Now, we've also learned that if you shecht the Korban Pesach shalol lishma, it becomes a shlomim. It's a kosher shlomim. So therefore, if you shecht the Korban Pesach on the third day of Pesach, shalol lishma chayiv, because you've shechted a kosher dika Pesach and you have chametz, you can be chayiv for this lav of lo tishchat al chametz. Ushar kol azvachim, other korbanos like a korban chatas, a korban asham during Pesach, ben lishman, ben shalol lishman chayiv, chutz ben achatas. Because we know a chatas that is shechted shalol lishma is like a korban pesach shalol lishma, which is possible. So since the korban is possible, you would not get the lav of lo sishchat al chametz. But other korbanos, even if you shech them shalol lishma, the bailim might not get credit for it, but it would be a kosher animal. You'd be able to eat it. So therefore, if you have chametz in your possession, you'd be over the lav of lo sishchat al chametz tam zivchi. On Reish Lakish. Now, who has to be in possession of the chametz? According to Reish Lakish, either the one who shafts or the one who does the zrika sadam, if he has personal ownership of chametz at that time, he'd be over this law. Oh, like we said, there's a subscription process to the Korban Pesach. Anyone who subscribed to that Korban Pesach, if he has chametz, he would be over that law. And ad shehei imo ba'azara, this chametz can't just be at his home or in a garage somewhere. It has to be with him in the azara when he shechts. Rabbi Yochanan says no. Even if the chametz is at his home, he'd be over the lav of lo tishchat al chametz tam zivchi. So, b'may kamifli, what is the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Tanna Kama? Ilema ba'al b'samach kamifli. Is Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan arguing because it says lo tishchat al chametz? Al means on the chametz. Now, are they arguing in what the word al means? That maybe al means it has to be close. The Reish Lakish says al b'samach. Reish Lakish says al means it's got to be close by. Therefore, he learned if the chametz is in the azara with you, when you shecht or when you zoyrate, you're going to be chayiv. But Rav Yochanan says lo b'yin al b'samach, and Rav Yochanan says you don't need the al doesn't say it has to be next to you. It could be wherever it is. So the Gemara says, but Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish have already had this machlokas of al. Does al mean b'samuch somewhere else? Does not. Hashoichet toida lifnim. So a korban toda is a korban shlamim. The only difference is you have to bring 40 loaves of bread with the korban to make it a korban toda. 30 of a matzah, 30 loaves matzah, 10 loaves chametz. So we didn't bring a korban toda on Pesach, but in general, korban toda requires that you shecht the korban with 40 loaves. Now, let's say the loaves are not physically connected in some way to the korban in proximity. So, for example, you shechted the animal lifnim within Yerushalayim. The lachma chutz l'choima, and the loaves were shechted outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. So lo kiddush halechem. The lechem doesn't become sanctified. Now, my chutz l'choma, what defines the choma? Rav Yochanan Omar, chutz l'choma is based pagi, which is really the walls around Yerushalayim. Aber chutz l'choma is azar kodesh. As long as the lachmei toda are within the city of Yerushalayim, even if it's outside the walls of the Azara, the lechem becomes kodesh. The lo ba'inan al b'samuch. Al is not, because there also it says al zevach todas chalos, right? It uses the word al, but the chalos have to be al the zevach. So, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the al does not require that the loaves be right next to the korban. But Reish Lakish Amar filu chutz l'choyim sazar lo yikadosh. No. Al means the loaves have to be next to the korban. And if the loaves were outside even the walls of the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash, it wouldn't be hegdish. Alma be'inin al b'samuch. So we already have a machlokas regarding this concept of al b'samuch in the sugya of lachmei toda. So why would I need to be told the machlokas again between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish regarding this al lo tishchat al chametz dam zivchi? Ella, so the machlokas between Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan must be something else. Bahasra safek miflagi. So we know that whenever you give malchus, you have to be able to give a warning that, you know what, you're about to do this aveira, and these are the details of the aveira, and if you do it, you're going to get malchus. It's got to be done right before a person does it, otherwise there's no malchus. Now, what if it's unclear? What if the hasra is a suffix hasra, not a badai hasra? Meaning, if the person doesn't have the chametz with him, when you say to him, oh, you know, there's a lot of lo tishchat al chametz, so if you saw chametz with him, you could give him a proper hasra, that's hasra's vadai. And if you don't see the chametz with him, it's really hasra suffix. And then the question is a hasra suffix a valid hasra? So then you could say, Rav Yochanan says, if you don't, that even if you don't have it with you, you could still get a valid asra, even though it's a hasra suffix, it's considered asra. And Reish Lakish says no, a hasra suffix is not considered asra. But the Gemara says, this sugya of asra suffix has also been a debate between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Itmar, shvua she'oichel kikar zu hayom. Person takes an oath that I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread today. V'over hayom v'lo achla. And the day passed, he didn't eat it. So Rabbi Yochanan Bar Shimon Beit Lakish Damer Tavayu Ein Aloke. They both hold you don't get malchus, but for different reasons. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ein Aloke Mishum Davilei Lav Shed B'Maisa. Number one, speech is a lav without action, because he holds that akima sfasa, moving your lips, is not enough to create a maisa. So any lav without a maisa, the cholav sheba maisa loikin alav. Aval asra safik shema asra. Now the how do you give a straw to somebody like this? Oh, you know what? If you took a shvua that you're going to eat this bread, if you don't eat this bread, you're going to get mak. Now, throughout the whole day, he could turn around and eat the bread. So the asra is also only a sofik asra. Yet he holds that otherwise he would get malchus if it wasn't for the fact that dibur is a lav shein b'maisa. Reish Lakish Shamar ain't a lokim mishum davle asra sofik. In fact, Reish Lakish holds he doesn't get malchus because the asra is not a vade asra. Asra sofik losh masra. Because otherwise, lav shein b'maisa according to Reish Lakish loikin a lav. So the Gemara right now is struggling to understand the machlokas with Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan regarding this albus, this why there's one hold that you have to have the reading more. It says la'olam ba'al b'samach kamiflagi. Really, they are arguing in whether the al has to be close by or not. The question is, why did we have to have a machlokas and a different sugya by the lachmei toda as well? Tzrichi, we need it in both places. If legulinian chametz, if we would have only had the machlokas regarding chametz b'pesach hava mina bahu to come Rav Yochanan, maybe only there. Rav Yochanan says that the chametz doesn't have to physically be with him. The lo bein and al b'samach from the isserhu, because there's an isser of bayiro bayamatze. That concept means a person can't have chametz wherever it is, even physically distant from him. The kohecha the isi, wherever it is, and therefore that's why by chametz he holds that you'll be over the lav of lo sishchat al chametz tam zivchi, no matter where the chametz is. But regarding the lachmei toda, maybe he'll agree that loy kodesh ela bifnim, that the lachmei toda would not become hegdish unless the loaves were together with the korban when you shecht it, right? More the later Rav ben Lakish to be in and al b'somo. The Isa Gavoy, if it was there, Kaddish, lo Kaddish. Meet it about clay sharis. And we see an example that when you put, let's say, flour in a kli shares, like a mincha, it's miskadesh within the kli shares and not anywhere else. And a kli shares only works when you're in the azara. So there's already a precedent for that concept. So tzricha. B'yashvim l'migdash lechem. Maybe if we've only had the machlokas between Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan regarding whether the lachmei toda was niskadesh, havamina b'hachkam Rav Lakish ben al b'samo. For example, for exactly that reason that Reish Lakish requires it to be close by, the Yisigavik Kodesh, Iloloi Kodesh, because of this precedence that we learned from a Klishares, of a lenient Chametz, maybe more than Rav Yochanan, the Loba in al B'Samach the Yisuru, we already have Bayiro Bayamatze, which is an Isser, no matter where it is, the Kolecha Yisei. So we have to be shown that the machlokas exists in both cases. Tzricha. Boy Rav Hashem Ravani. Ein Lola Shochet. One of the shechts of Korban Pesach does not have the chametz, but the Yeshol Echad b'mei Chabura. But one of the Chabura, the subscription people, have the chametz. What's it in? Amr lei miksiv lo sishchat al chametzcha. It doesn't say don't shecht on your chametz, meaning to the shoichet. It says lo sishchat al chametz, general ksiv, and therefore even if one of the bnei Chabura has it, it should be a problem. So I understand. So does that mean anybody in the world with chametz will have this lav, and the guy has a lav for shechting it? Amr leg, no. Amr kro lo sishchat v'lo yalin. The pasuk says lo shishchat al chametz v'lo yalin aboker. Don't let the korban pesach sit until the morning. Lo shishchat al chametz hanech dekaini alei mishum lo yom. It means the same person, the same people that are going to be chayv on lo yolin, only they will have the lav of lo sishchat. So it's only the bnei Chabura that there's going to be a problem with lo yalin. Someone's got to be connected to that korban. If you're not connected to the korban, there would be no aveira. Rav Papa Hilkach, based on this, koyin amaktir sachelev. Now remember, korban Pesach, you had to collect the dam, you had to do zrika of the dam, but there were also chelev and emurim that had to be offered on the mizbeach. So maybe koyin amaktir sachelev oiver blosase hoil v'yesh lo bichlal alonas emurim. So if the koyin has chametz and he's the one who's maktir the chelev, is he going to be over the lav as well? Since there's a din of bal yalin of the emurim, you should not keep it until the morning as well. In fact, Tanya Kavosed Rav Papa. I'll bring you a brisa to prove Rav Papa. Shoichet is a Pesach ala chametz. Somebody shechs korban Pesach with chametz. Oiv lo yisaseh. Emasai when bisman shehula shoichet. If the chametz is owned by the one who's shechting, ola zorek, to the one who does zrika, ola echad b'mechabura, or if the chametz is owned by one of the subscribers, but just because somebody in the world has chametz and zakuklo, then there's no connection between them. That's where we come in, that even the person who's maktir the chaylev is going to be chayiv. Aval hamoylek es ha'of ba'arba'asar. Someone does mlika of a bird korban, which is not a korban pasach. It's either an ola or a chatas ha'of. On the 14th day of Nisan, he had chametz in his rishus. Ein oiver b'lo klum. He's not over this lav of lo sishchat al chametz. First of all, he's not shechting. He's doing malika. For it to come over minu, I'll show you a stira. Hashoichet is a pesach al chametz. Oiver b'lo yisaseh. If you shech the korban pesach with chametz, you're oiver. Rabbi Yehuda oimer afatami. Even a non-pesach korban, like the korban atami. Amru lo amru el pesach milvad. The lav is only by the korban pesach. Why? A Messiah. Bisman sheyesh l'shoichet or l'zorik or l'echad b'nei chabura. As long as one of these people has chametz, the shoichet, the zorik, or one of the subscribers, but hayl echad b'sof ha'olam ein zakuk. The echad ha'shoichet, the echad ha'zorik, the echad ha'moylek. That's our kasha. This price says even the moylek. Now you don't moylek a korban pesach. You can only be moylek a bird. The echad hamazeh, which is squeezing the bird's blood onto the mizbeach chayiv, as they have chametz. So this price is clearly contradictory to the price that we just quoted. What is excluded is someone who does kmitza of a mincha and has chametz in his possession. Then there's no lav of lo sishcha. Then it also says hamaktir sa'imurim. That was what we started off with. The kohen who's maktir the emurim. If he has chametz, is he oiver? Eino oiver b'lo yisaseh. So kasha medlika malika, kasha aktora. We've clearly shown by these two barises a contradiction. One says malika is not involved. One says malika is involved. One says haktora is involved. One says haktora is not involved. So how do we fe'emfer? So that we'll have to wait until tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we'll learn Motzei Shabbos, God willing, at 6:30. Okay?
Okay.
Have a
Shabbos
good-
and
have a
Daf
good
are
Erev
almost
Shabbos.
6.
Shabbos,
Have a good-
everybody.
Ernie,
Shabbos.
beautiful daf. Ernie, that's full of so much. It's beautiful daf.
Yes,
Wow.
very nice stuff.
Unbelievable. So much. God.